So 2 glasses of water handy, one for washing my brush out, one for getting fresh water. My paint box. I know the colours in here quite well. Like with so many things, the more you do something, practice, you get to know your tools, the easier it is. So again, I want to work quite fast so that the paint stays fresh and alive. I often start with the sky and the grass. I don't want them, you don't want to have to kind of fit them around things at the end. I don't have much of this blue left, but hopefully there's enough. This is cerulean blue, which I usually use for sky. And that's got a little bit dirty, so I'm not going to use that first bit that I've washed my brush out. Try again. Clean water. Now you can see it's a cloudy sky. So that's looking clean. The one next to it, definitely dirty. You don't want to mix more, you want to mix enough to do the whole of what you're going to do, because otherwise you won't get the colours the same. So, I'm going to suggest the clouds, so it's not going to be solid blue. And again, I'm going to keep my paintbrush moving fast because I don't want to make it look overworked. And it doesn't matter really with the sky if there's some bits that are a bit more dilute. Of course, you're using the blue to suggest the shape of the clouds, so you've got to think a bit about the shape of the clouds. And you see, I'm trying not to get too close to the edge. Get to that bit paler. And this isn't quite keeping my idea of fading it out, so again, I don't want to go in and do too much because then it makes it look overworked. The grass, well, we've got a nice sap green, which is quite good for grass. But often grass on a sunny day has got more of a yellow in it. So I'm going to use a little bit of my lemon yellow here. Brighten it slightly. I mean, when you look at the photo, it's very coarse grass, and there are some dark shadows in it. So I might add a different green to suggest the shadows. But the focus of this picture is not the grass. So you're just suggesting there is some grass here, really. You don't have to go overboard with the detail. With a dry brush, painting out, it gives a bit more of a suggestion of the kind of scratchy grass. I think that'll do. The actual grass is a darker colour, but maybe we'll add another green on top, but when that's dry. It's important with watercolour to let the layers dry, because otherwise you end up with a muddy mix. But there's usually another part of the picture you can go and work on. So we've clearly got a lot of red accents with the signs and the parasol and the chairs. And once they go in, it will really make the picture. But I think I'll work in some more of the background colours first. We've got, in the middle ground, we've got this kind of peachy colour on the front of the wall and behind the sign. I might try that. It's a funny colour because when you mix red and yellow, you get orange. And peach isn't quite an orange, it's got a bit of white in it, which you could think it was just a lighter orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this lightest orange that I've got. I'm going to try adding a little bit of this white. With watercolour you don't normally add white because the page gives you the white. And I'm going to add a teeny bit of this red. And you see I've got a kind of peach now, which we will run along here, and down here, and down here. Along here, and it's everywhere. What's a bit strange is it's been painted onto the mortar, which is normally grey, but someone's, even though they've not covered up the breeze blocks with plaster, which is what you might expect, they've gone to the trouble of painting the mortar. It comes down onto these. Now I'm in danger of running out of my paint colour, but I really need to do it where this sign is. So it starts about halfway along here. And then it carries on. Now if the writing was white, I'd have a bit of a challenge because if you're using the page for the white, you'd have to go around each letter with this colour, but thankfully it's red, so I can just paint red on top of this, and because the red is stronger, it will stand out on top. Now unfortunately I ran out of paint, and I'm going to have to make a little bit more, because it's not bright enough, that bit I've just done. And in some ways it should be even darker because it's underneath the shadow of the overhanging building. You can see the danger that it's not the same colour. It is darker. Use a bit somewhere else just to kind of make it look like it wasn't a mistake. A slightly lighter version of it under here, so I'm just going to dilute it and get some in there. Check around, see if you can use it anywhere else before you give up. This bit here kind of has it. Okay, otherwise these are all greens. There's a kind of shadowy area where I could use it here. It's probably not dark enough. Shadows are difficult because you can it's not just a case of adding black. But it's very hard to mix them exactly right. That one probably needs a little bit of a blue to get it shadowy. So let's see if that works. And let's probably leave it as well. Now there's a black colour, let's lift this out. Called Payne's Grey, which is this one here, which is quite good for shadows because it's made up of dark blues and reds, so you get an interesting colour when you use it. So I will get a little bit to use for my breeze blocks and other shadows that are white, like on the white paint. But again, you just got to keep your brush moving so it doesn't all end up looking the same and too controlled. So can you see under here is a shadow which comes down onto the side of that. And it's even more shadowy, so we probably want a bit more of that under here. Interesting what's going on here. just across the top of that. Got a bit more colour on your brush, and then just add it into some of the paler bits you've done. Okay, good. Where next? So we've got a green grill here, we've got green signs here, and a green grill here with the glass showing behind it, which is actually quite hard to paint. And I'm not going to do the detail, so I'm going to just go for a dark, particularly with this one, which is just very dark really, with add some green. It is a rectangle, so I don't want to ignore that. There's a little bit of it showing behind here. It's cut off by the awning. I can suggest some sort of vertical things going on. I think I'll do. There's a sharp corner there which I'm trying to get. I might need to add another layer on top of that. Much brighter, so I'll go back to my sap green. We've got a kind of lime green, so the one I was using for the grass. Add some brighter yellow. I think we're getting there. This is a well-known green because it's the one used by the phone company, so you've got to get it roughly right. Thankfully there's no detail in there, it's just a big panel of green. There's a logo right in the middle, but hopefully that's not going to present us with a major problem, because it's a darker colour. So these bits of metal are leaning on it. It's in shadow, so it's not going to be a really loud green. There are some bits of that green on this door that are a bit brighter, so we can add some more yellow. And there's loads of things hanging on here, so I'm going to just, when you don't want to suggest something's neat and tidy, keeping that brush moving fast is key. So much hanging down. We'll go darken it up again because we're back in the shadows over here. But there's a lot of this green around, so there's this M-Pesa sign at the back here, which has got lettering in the same colour. I'll avoid getting into too much lettering. I'm going to darken that up with the hooker's green now for this grill over here. Now, I've not done any pencil lines, so again I'm just sort of suggesting it really. And no one's going to know when they look at this whether it was an exact match to the photo, because they're not going to see the photo at the same time because I won't let them. Okay, there's a door over here, but that's right on the other side of that. I'm just trying to see where else this green is used. There's these lines down here. The tricky thing is though that there's an even darker green, a darker window colour behind. But, we've got to at least try to suggest it, haven't we? Unless these bands have got a bit of green on them. There's a door here actually, whoops. Good. Let's do the dirt, the ground, which is a nice warm brown. There's one here called raw umber. If I use a bit of this ochre, which is even more golden, and add it, I think we'd be getting close. So my clean water jar has now become my dirty one, so I'm going to switch those around because I wasn't paying enough attention. And of course the ground isn't an even colour, there are darker bits and lighter bits, particularly in front of the doorway here it's very light, so you need to bear that in mind. So start where it's darkest because you'll end up adding water probably, and then it's going to get lighter. So, and then of course there are shadowy areas where you might want to add some of a darker shadow colour, but I'm not worried about that just yet. Bring it in to meet the grass in places, so I'd like to think of what's in between the grass and the brown. It's not bad. It's an even redder colour than I've managed in real life, I think. I do have some redder browns, but I think I'm too late for risking introducing those now. Okay, we got a lot of browns with these benches on both sides, so while we're in brown world, this is definitely a redder brown. This is called burnt umber, the previous one being raw umber. I might do a bit of a mix of those two. Got such a strong highlight on the front of that table, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to capture that. This rock is pretty much the same colour. So many different bits of red. And it's definitely lighter on top of that one. Legs. There's a piece of post here, that one's the same colour for. Wash it down a bit on the top of this table. There's a whole cabinet here I've not really drawn. There's a bit of wood under the awning here. Not really there. Okay, we're building up slowly. Once we get some of the really dark shadows in, we'll be, you know, it will start to feel more three-dimensional. And once we finally add that red, that will be what gives it its drama. I think we'll add some of the darker shadows now. So using this Payne's grey, which is much more interesting than black. It dries with bits of blue and purple sort of showing. So one place is over here. See, I'm not quite drawn it accurately because there's a post down the middle of the shadow, but I've only got in one place. And what about in this shot? Because there are kind of details in there, but even this guy's legs. But I'm going to just accept that I can't. I'm just going to kind of paint it in as hard as I can. I'm going to leave some sort of suggestion of stuff. It's basically his head. But his legs are there. Let's get some blue to add in. You can imagine he's wearing some dark trousers. Clean that out and get some neat Payne's grey again. It's these deep shadows that will really give it a 3D look. Probably got too much water there because when it dries we'll lose some of that. It's hard to suggest the darkness through this grill, but we'll try. Same thing. Yeah, don't want to overwork it. So there's sun behind here, but again, where the light's reflecting, there's some actually much lighter bits. So we don't want to just colour them in, assuming they're all the same. The drinks machine's got some interesting shadows going on as well, but there are bottles to be seen as well, so we don't want to obliterate it. There's an orange here. I don't know what that is, but there's a kettle painting and then an orange panel. We'll get that in. Yep, someone has painted a kettle picture. Oh, it's a complicated one. I'm looking at the drain pipe over here, which is pink. So I just mix a very dilute red, because the more dilute, the more the page shows through and the more it will look pink. It's obviously darker at the edges, but it's really hard to capture that. I might just, and I should let it dry, because otherwise it's just going to bleed across. So just giving it a little bit of dark colour towards the bottom. Oh, the reds want to be done, but let's just do a few more other bits. So we've got some nice blues around. So cobalt blue is a nice mid blue, which we could use for this chair here. And this one over here, which I didn't draw, I might leave it out. And the wheelbarrows are darker, so if we get some ultramarine blue, that's actually just about right. So there's a rectangular panel at the back, and then slopey panel here, and then the support, and there's an object on here that's a similar colour, which is going to confuse people. And then we want a diluted version of the inside, because it's now, unfortunately, my diluted version is bled onto my dark version. Don't really want, it's hard to rectify that now, but better not to try and do too much to it. There are some paler blue things, so we've got a bag over here, we've got a bench here, but again there's darker shadowy bits and lighter bits. So where it's lighter, I can actually take some of that colour away. There's a little table here that's light blue. Just go motorbike. As long as we've suggested something in each area, people aren't going to think, oh, there's something missing. There's a yellow stripe over here, which is quite cool. Get that in. Really bright yellow. My yellow's a bit dirty, so I'm not sure I'm going to get it. When my paint's grey, there's all these bits of metal. I really should use a thinner brush for these, but this is the only brush I'm going to use. The inking in at the end is where a lot of this is going to get more defined. There's something dark going on back here, so we'll just splat that as a lot of shadow in here. There's a wooden post coming down here. There's the peach colour behind, which I've lost now. Oh, no, I've not really thought enough about this motorbike. There's an interesting banner on the back, which is yellow. The problem with a smaller brush is it would push me towards doing more detail, and I really don't want to get drawn into doing lots of fussy detail. So I'll keep going with the big brush. There probably would be some value in using a smaller one for a few details, like the thin bits of metal that are leaning up against the building. So there are red details on the motorbike. So we're going to have to roll out the red in a minute, which will feel like the last part of this. This tank up here is really interesting. Yeah, so many different shadowy things going on. But I'm not trying to get it exact. I'm just trying to suggest it. Because people's eyes and brains don't need a lot of information for them to kind of get the idea of what is being looked at. There's more shadows under the motorbike, under the wheelbarrow, under this bench, but I'm going to hold back on that until near the end. We've got some vegetation under here. You can see the highlights are almost white on the leaves, but we can't go into. So we're stopping thinking, how can I capture that? But it's pretty challenging. So as long as there's a bit of white paper around for the bright leaves, I think that's the best we're going to be able to do. No other vegetation really, there's a bit of some green there, but we don't want to get into too much. Time for the red, time for the red. Exciting. So here's my bright red, signal red. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to do the red. I have cleaned out some more space on my paint tray for mixing. I have gone and found a smaller paintbrush. Not that I plan to use it much, but I suspect I will need it in places. So I'll keep that handy. I've got my brush loaded up with red paint here. So the painting is dry, so I'm going to start top left so that I don't smudge what's on the page that's wet as I move across. So we've got this big sign at the top of the building here. So let's make it red. It's actually a darker red on here compared to the parasol. So we might need to just work another darker red into it in a minute. And there's also the markings of the bottle, which are a browny red, aren't they? So let's see how that shapes up. I am going to put some white paint over the top of this, so don't worry that I'm going over everything. In fact, let's make it all red. So we've got the top of the fridge drinks cabinet. We've got the side of the drinks cabinet, which is a bit darker. Let me come back and do that. This lovely bucket over here. And then all these lovely chairs. I'm not going to go for the small paintbrush because it will make me too fussy. I'm just going to suggest them as best I can. Put a table in there as well. Obviously, looking at them closely in the photo, there are some highlights on the chairs, or areas where the sun's catching them, which are much lighter, and then areas of shadow. Very difficult to capture that, but there are some things we could do in a moment. Possibly. That's basically the chairs done. Legs everywhere. Now parasol. Coca-Cola writing everywhere, which complicates it. But I just leave some patches of white to suggest that break them up a little bit. How's that? And the last bit of red is over here on this side. These are like the Coca-Cola adverts. I'm sure. And a motorbike. Not much, but there's on the red that's visible, but some. Okay, now I said about a trick we can do with the highlights, so I'm going to get my small paintbrush, and at the bottom of these legs I'm going to lift out some paint by just putting the paintbrush with the water on it, using a bit of kitchen roll. Possibly a bit fussy, but we'll give it a try. What do you think? Get this bit lighter as well. I'm going to use my lighter paintbrush while I've got it in my hand to suggest the Coca-Cola writing up here. Just definitely some brushes for that. And then I wanted a slightly darker version of the red, so I'm going to add a dark blue in there. Takes it slightly towards purple to do the side of this. Possibly a bit too much blue. Nice. Now this gate behind here is actually a very similar colour, dark reddy purple, so how about we use that as soon as we've got it ready. There's a darker shadow. Get a bit more blue. Make sure I can make this work. It sort of folds. And this is a Coca-Cola sign. And because it's a white sign, we want a Payne's grey shadow across that. And Payne's grey, you can see it does help with shadows, so if I drop a little bit in elsewhere, see if that helps us. If we want a bit of red suggested in the drinks cabinet, bottles. Some flags over here that are definitely a bit red. No, those are not in the right place. I'm not going to worry. Good, getting there. Now we've ignored this man and his clothes. We've got some yellow polythene on a roll down here, so it's not that either. Some white one above it. And use Payne's grey shadow. I'm suggesting it something down there. We'll use the black pen to clean that up. Now there's a man in the shop with a fluorescent tabard on. Unless you've actually got fluorescent paint, which has a special reflective quality, it's very hard to get it right. So this other chap has got a white shirt, so we need some Payne's grey to do shadows. He's got khaki trousers on. Just a kind of brown, Payne's grey, raw umber. Okay, this is where we want to really have a pale base. You can see how light the bottom of this trousers are. And I'll drop in some shadow of a darker colour in a minute. And then he's got a dark blue sleeveless jumper kind of thing. So we'll mix some dark blue and some Payne's grey to get a really dark blue. And the danger here is it's going to run with the colours I've put there, but I'll take the risk. I might have to come back and sharpen some of that up. Because he's not the main focus of the painting, you'll be forgiven for being a bit rough and ready. Put some brown shoes on. I'm using a different brown I've not used yet, but hopefully that will. I'm not sure I'm getting the movement in his figure because of straightening him up a bit too much. But we're getting close. Time is coming when I am going to need to use my pen, and I can always add a little bit of colour later, including the shadows. So I think I'll do the pen work next, and then lastly the shadows. The name of the shot is this dark red. So using a bit of the blue again. Watching out for wet paint. Don't put my hand on it. So it's a funny name. I'm using my thin paintbrush. It's Jamo Eri Gen for General Merchant. You can just see the EN here. EN. These are handwritten signs. I need to be so careful I don't run out of room. You see some of the strokes are thicker than others, but it's hard with this paintbrush to get that effect, but I know I've spaced out, I can make some of them thicker. That wasn't the right one. How's that look? I'm worried I've got not enough space here. Doesn't matter if it goes into this support concrete, but I think I've made that too long anyway. worried that something's got to be wet. I think it's okay. So there's all extra bits on the writing that stick out, called serifs, and often used different fonts. I think that's fine. There's a lot hanging down on this door that we're not really worried about because it's really complicated. And the pen will do a lot of that, but if we at least get a little bit of colour, some really reds and some yellows. There's a sign at the bottom which is darker colours. I want to just do that M piece aside, which is up here with an M. There's a little hyphen, part of my logo, a little red shape. This guy's got a nice pink top on, but the only way to make pink is by using pale red. So what we'll do is we'll put some red on. I'll move it so we're happy. There you go, pink. I want to make a darker Coke up here, and this side here is a bottle, isn't there? So I'm going to suggest it. Do nicely. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there and let it dry, and then we'll use the pen on that